Before Zambia attained its political independence in 1964, it was known as Northern Rhodesia. The country was historically linked to the British South African Company, BSAC, a chartered company from 1911 to 1924. During this time, Cecil Rhodes, the owner of the BSA company, embarked on a grand idea to expand the British Empire north of the Limpopo and started an ambitious project to link Cape to Cairo through the construction of a road and rail network. The road and rail link opened Northern Rhodesia to economic activities in agriculture and mining, creating a smooth passage for early European settlers. By 1924, the administration of Northern Rhodesia was transferred to the British colonial government, which ruled the country for 40 years up to October 24, 1964. The entry of commercial banking in Northern Rhodesia followed activities of the BSA company and the influx of early European settlers who needed banking services and predates Zambia's attainment of independence on October 24, 1964. In that particular year, 1964, when Zambia attained its independence, the country's banking landscape was vastly different. Just a handful of banks, mostly foreign-owned, served a predominantly rural population with limited access to financial services.
Banking in Zambia entered this market way back in 1905. So if you count, it was 59 years to Independence Day, which is nearly 60 years. And we are 60 years post-independence. So the banking sector was there 60 years before independence, way before we saw any development, well before any major industries were set up, including the mines in this country. So the early settlers, the early farmers that came with the legendary Cecil Rhodes, as he was putting up the rail line, it wasn't just a rail line. There were workers that came through. There were early settlers who were farmers.
However, Standard Chartered Bank, operating as Standard Bank then, was the first bank in Zambia to venture into the unbanked territory of Northern Rhodesia. It opened its first branch to the public in 1905 in Kalomo district of Southern Province, which was then the capital city of Northern Rhodesia. Only 3 banks were in operation when Zambia attained its independent status in 1964, namely Standard Chartered, Barclays, and ANZ Grindlays Bank.
The first bank in Zambia was Standard Chartered Bank. It opened in 1905 in Kalomo district. A few years later, it was followed by Barclays Bank in 1918, and a little later, I think in the 40s thereabout, ANZ Grindlays Bank also came into our market. So by the time we were going to independence, basically we had 3 international banks: Standard Chartered Bank, Barclays Bank, and ANZ Grindlays Bank. This was an Australian bank, which these were the banks that were operating at the point of independence. So banks were there, they saw it all.
In the decades following independence, Zambia witnessed a remarkable transformation in its banking sector. From humble beginnings to a thriving industry, the country's banking sector has evolved significantly, driven by innovation, technological advancements, and a commitment to financial inclusion. The Central Bank of Zambia, established in 1964, became the cornerstone for building a robust domestic banking system. over the years, it has played a crucial role in steering the industry through economic ups and downs. Former Bank of Zambia Governor Dr. Caleb Fundanga highlighted the challenges and opportunities that shaped the industry over the past 60 years.
All the banks were, during the colonial time, they were international banks. The Barclays, the Standard Chartered I've talked about, the Greenlands, and so forth. There wasn't any bank you could say was a Zambian bank. So that already was something, a challenge, isn't it? So at independence, our first president, Dr. Kaunda, thought that this was, at that time they were nationalizing everything. But the banking sector, I think, was resistant to full-scale nationalization. So the option the government had was to introduce a Zambian bank, Zanaco, Zambia National Commercial Bank. And Zanaco grew very fast because it had the privileged status. And so the government had its accounts there. The parastatals, the emerging parastatal sector, they had their accounts there and so forth. So it became bigger than all the other banks. Now, at that time, the biggest challenge we had was that the sector was not really open. So when liberalization started, they opened up the sector so that anybody who had the resources could open a bank.
As Zambia celebrates its 60th anniversary, it is hoped that there will be more local bank establishments which would serve to strengthen and cushion the economy.
I must say that one of the key worries is that we don't have many, if any, local banks. Okay, we still have not saved. Zanaco, as you know, was eventually, a good chunk of it was sold to Rabobank, Dutch Bank. We had this Invest Trust, the local bank just folded up recently. So this is worrying. A country cannot develop without strong local banks, because local banks have got a different perspective in terms of if you went there to borrow money, for instance, the way they would look at you probably is not the same way that an international bank will look at you, isn't it? So I don't know of any country that has developed without strong local banks. So as we celebrate the 60th independence anniversary, my prayer and hope would be that we can reflect on how we can establish good, strong local banks.
The economic sector recognizes the critical role that the banking sector has played in Zambia's economic growth and development, making significant contributions over the past 6 decades. The sector has facilitated access to credit, mobilized savings, and promoted financial inclusion, thereby supporting entrepreneurship, job creation, and economic expansion.
The role of the banking sector is basically financial intermediation, and we cannot talk about development taking the role that the financial sector plays in the equation. So we have had so much progressive stories to speak in terms of how the banking sector has been able to support Zambia's economic growth, how it has been able also to support human capital development. Now, if you look at the contribution of the banking sector to the country's GDP, I think it ranked number 3, right? And number 3 in the sense that the kind of support that they continue to give to the small and medium enterprises, even to the large corporates. We are now talking about Mamba Colaris, right? Yes, they require almost $500 million to progress with the second phase of construction of the new coal power plant. But out of that $500 million, the $100 million is being syndicated by commercial banks.
A former banker with over 20 years of experience shared her thoughts on significant changes that have taken place in the banking sector over the years.
During my time, when we just joined, we used to have what they called, at some adding machines, they used to call Olivetti machines. And we used to post information on the customers' bank statements. That's the debits they bring in, the credits, and the balances would show on the statements. It was a tedious and very slow process. Yeah, but later on, the bank introduced computers. That was around the late 80s. They introduced computers which were more efficient. And of course, the work was easier now at the bulk of the bank.
Zambia's banking sector has expanded and diversified significantly. Though the banking sector has evolved positively over the years, there is still room for improvement.
Customer service was much, much better than what we are seeing now. Because when you go to the bank, you are expected to talk to a customer relations officer who is mostly blank. You ask him a question, is he going to make inquiries with the manager? Meanwhile, the queues are getting longer. So really, customer service now, they really have to work hard. It's not the same as what we used to give them that time.
Technological advancements such as digital banking, mobile banking, and other innovative financial services have played a key role in the development of the banking sector. A customer who has enjoyed banking services over the years reflected on their past experiences and compared past services to current ones being offered now, noting great improvements.
I started banking about 20 years old. Then it was really very difficult to do banking. If you lived, say, like I did in Chilanga, you had to travel all the way to town. There are not as many branches as they are now all over the place. So you had to come into town, do your banking, or if you wanted to pay somebody, you'd have to come into town, go and pay them. All those inconveniences which have been eradicated now.
The banking sector stands poised to play an even more important role in the country's future as the nation celebrates its 60 years of independence.
In terms of the prospects, like what I've said, or rather how we think the reforms should take, reforms are continuous. As we are talking right now, I know that the Bank of Zambia is reviewing some certain aspects of the banking sector to make it more robust. You remember that there was a discussion not too long ago over the de-dollarization of the economy. Those are some of the reforms, right? So I think we continue to entrench the international best practices so that our system and our financial sector can continue to play a meaningful role in our development.
So I would like a situation where I go into a bank and I come out within 5 minutes. Those queues that we find in the banks are not necessary, especially having diversified in this manner where there are so many other things that are happening out there in terms of banking facilities, banking services. We would like to see a situation where the bank is cleared of those queues. Not only that, we would like to have an effective and efficient way of serving the customers, in the bank.
I'm seeing that the next 60 years or more, there'll be double opportunities for everyone. We should see a growing economy. We should see improved livelihoods. And I think everything that we see, I always say that if we've achieved this in 60 years, we are yet to achieve more, but in double portions. So if you look at the city of Lusaka, in the next 60 years, it will not accommodate 3 million people. Perhaps we'll be talking double the number. Maybe there'll be 6-7 million people living in Lusaka. So there'll be double opportunities for everyone. So the banks will be there to make sure that they provide those opportunities for growth. whether people want to improve their livelihoods through acquisition of homes, whether they want to start businesses, whether they want to start farming, whether they want to go into the tourism business, be assured that the banking sector will always be there.
We're in 2024, so things are a little bit different. For example, now we can have internet banking. I can check on things, I can use a card. It's become a lot easier and a lot less complicated in some ways.
60 years down the line, Zambia's banking sector has undergone a transformative journey, weathered challenges, and seized opportunities. Zambia's banking sector truly reflects the country's growth and resilience, with a focus on financial inclusion, digital transformation, and supporting the growth of key economic sectors. The industry is positioned to be a catalyst for the country's continued prosperity in the decades to come.